Mr. Farassati.
Thank you, Mayor. Lindsay, thank you so much. So I am sure you remember our meeting in 2019 when I and Councilman Hambelin also enjoyed the cooperation of you and your staff in explaining the situation to us. So at that point in 2019, before the world was upside down, you were giving us about a 2-year difference in scenario in terms of the first phase. I don't think it's that much objective at this point that we talk about all the phases of it at this point, because we are at the juncture that we are making a decision about the phase 1, which is the most important phase according to your studies, and you want to accomplish. At that point, if I remember right, and please feel free to correct me, it was a 2-year time frame movement between no toll or toll in terms of the first phase.
So at the time, I think...
In 2019.
Yes. In 2019, we had a discussion about what that phase 1 study was looking at.
Right.
And based on the assumptions that we knew and the way that the IKE program was built, we were looking at a every 2-year selection of projects that would move from development into construction. We knew that with the express toll lane option or with a local contribution, we were going to move this US 69 project as kind of the highest rated project very early in that selection. And so that's where we're posed to be today.
So what is it today? Let me just, because I don't want you to go and rehash everything that you said, just in the interest of time and your energy. Today, if right now, if this meeting never happened, and you wanted to give me my phase 1, toll versus no toll, what's the time gap?
Phase 1 would be the traditional widening for $70 million. We would start design and right-of-way acquisition in 2022, and then the project would be let to construction in 2025 and be constructed over 2 years, open to traffic in 27.
That's with no toll?
With no toll, with no local contribution.
Okay, and what does toll give me now? Let's say that I told myself on it.
If you allow the $300 million first phase of the express toll lane option, we would let that project for design and construction in 2022, and it would open for traffic in 2025.
Okay. So it's still like what I'm trying to explore from you and confirm with you that the first phase of this project, which I think the essentiality of what we go through in terms of thinking about a project like this, which is a highly scientific kind of like design, is that the projections over a very long period of time always feel uncertain. The politics in Topeka changes, administrations come, they have their eyes on the piggy bank of the transportation always, all of them. And a far-fetched planning, essentially, may not be as predictable as a short, focused, very specific, aim-oriented design. That's what I get at this. Although you have your predictions, but I think majority of our focus should be on phase 1 and what we get out of it. But let me go to my next question. So I have received, 3 town hall meetings, either on Zoom or in person, from 2019 to now. We're going to have one on Saturday. One of the things that comes up is that in the year 2021, when this country has a significant voice over social equity and social justice, this is a regressive tax. I don't want to be the one who sits in the 2-lane, and I give you the term, the Lexus lane is open because I can't pay for it. And the rationale is that, yes, you say you pay a user fee to be on the ETL, but my taxes are still in that. I mean, the rest of the expenditure still comes from me as a teacher, as a somebody who does not have a high socioeconomic kind of like resources. And how is it that is justifiable that I sit there and I see these cars passing by? I know this road, good portion of it is still with my taxes, and my government, it doesn't matter you guys or is authorizing that when this country is going through a significant demand of social equity and social justice for everybody. What would be my answer? I mean, because a lot of my colleagues here are asking you answers that they could back to constituents. So let me ask you that question. And if you are just presenting a technical matter and you don't want to answer it, I fully understand.
No, I think we have talked a lot about equity with the advisory group. I know Councilman Spears served on that, and we had that conversation. We want to work with those communities to see how we can alleviate negative impacts to them. I think when you look at the two options overall, the traditional widening is going to have the same performance in all three lanes at some point in this growth scenario. With the express toll lane, whether you're driving a Ford like I do or you're driving Lexus, you can make the decision in that moment if it's the right thing. And but we do want to work together and alleviate that. And I think some of the transit benefit from that reliable trip is also beneficial. One thing that you mentioned on sort of this focusing on phase one, I do want to be very clear that without the local contribution, we're building that first $70 million phase, and you really have to build all three of the first phases to see the same benefit that you would for the express toll lane option, which would take a little bit longer. So the 2 years is a very apt comparison, but you're just not getting as much benefit with the traditional widening.
Right. So okay, thank you. And again, like wanting to approach it does not mean that the question is going to go away of the social equity. So I am sure you guys, when you look at this, you guys are aware of significant problems that, for example, in Northern Virginia, they had with the toll lane going to DC causing lawsuits, essentially. And what mechanisms are built in to prevent situations like that? Highway 66, is it? I mean, in Northern Virginia to Washington, D.C., I consulted with a few, entities that I know, and that is a nightmare of a situation in terms of the cost going up and then the taxpayers having an issue with that. How do we get ourselves away from that? Do we have a mechanism?
Well, one thing that I would say kind of from a high-level perspective is that we have the ability to look at lessons learned that have happened around the country. But I do know that HNTB is very familiar with some of those other facilities, and I'd welcome somebody to come up and help me with that answer. Scott, thank you.
Scott Cooper with HNTB, and my limited understanding of that project is that is a public-private partnership where the operations is run by a private concessionaire that takes on that traffic and revenue risk, and in return they retain 100% of the profits from that. There may be some revenue share with the state of Virginia, but as a result, they have significant equity and debt on that project that they're willing to take that risk. And so they're looking at the revenue facility. Stream. Unlike this facility where KDOT has said this isn't about generating and maximizing revenue, it's about maximizing mobility. So with the owner, public sector, retaining ownership of this project, they have the ability to manage the limits on what that toll would be. So you wouldn't see the $48 tolls that you would
$23,000 a year. So, but still you need to be net positive at the end of the day.
That's certainly the intent.
The math applies whether you are government or private. So you need to be net positive. Therefore, my constituent has no guarantee mechanism that the rates are not going to jump. Because we could be in a situation, essentially, that you see the construction costs right now of concrete, of lumber, of A, B, C, maintenance costs. What I'm trying to get at is that by the language of the law that we are proposing, by the language of the agreement that we are proposing, there is nothing in there that prevents our constituents from burdening a six-fold increase hypothetically in 3 years.
I think you're right. We don't want to put a cap on the toll.
Right.
But the good news is that if no one's using the lane, the toll is going to go down.
But Lindsay, at that point, you wasted your money even putting a toll lane if no one uses it.
Well, right, which is why we're not using revenue generation as the mechanism to set the rates. We're using the demand to set the rates, which is different. We're not issuing bonds on this revenue stream, which is what a lot of the public-private partnerships do. We are looking at this as simply a way of generating local contribution and managing the traffic. So if the traffic's not willing to pay $5, you're never going to hit a toll of $5. We're opening day, $1.50 or $1.75 in peak travel, and we expect that that is going to provide the right amount of traffic in that third lane to really maximize the mobility of using that express toll lane.
Okay. Two fast questions and I will finish. Number one, National Motorist Association analyzed this for me. And one of the questions that came to in front of me was that, what are your predictions about alternative routes being overwhelmed because people want to escape the toll at this point and they're going to use alternative routes? How are we going to, do you have a insurance mechanism or a mechanism which assures me that my alternative routes are not going to get jammed up?
Yeah, so as we were studying this and looking at usage, we really partnered with Overland Park to understand what those arterial volumes are today. If you recall the revenue chart, we had the little dip because we know that there's going to be some additional mobility on the local system. I think a really good predictor of whether or not people decide to continue to use US 69 is the congestion that we have today. I've heard a lot of stories. I myself live this all the time when we have the congestion that we have. We map to see, okay, I've got to get to Topeka by a certain time. Is it going to be faster for me to drive all the way down Null and get on 435 or to get on US 69 and travel north that way? And there's a number of days that Null is faster than US 69.
And when you don't have the money, Null looks really attractive to you. Naturally.
Well, yeah. And but today we don't even have the option. So I think people are going to be able to continue to use US 69. I don't think that adding one lane of the three is going to be really restrictive, that drivers would completely avoid the highway. It's really if we're alleviating that congestion and they can have a reliable trip, and this option would provide that.
Okay. Last question, because it's on the mind of a lot of people. I lived in Boston, Turnpike. If you look at the date and when Turnpike was supposed to end, the toll lane, it goes back in the history. And it never ended, and it will never end. What I want is a straight answer. There is nothing guaranteeing that this toll lane will ever come down. There is you guys cannot offer us a guarantee. Is that a correct statement?
No. Under current state law, we cannot continue the toll after this agreement between us has reached its end.
But you just mentioned that with the change in the statutes, the mechanisms exist, and you showed this slide to continue it if we come to that conclusion. If the state comes to that conclusion.
Yeah, if the law changes, and I can't predict that.
Of course.
I can't predict if Overland Park's going to like this option or not like this option. Right now, everybody, I think, is looking for that reliable trip and are interested in tools to have it.
I just want to mention that that's probably what happened 30 years ago in Massachusetts, too.
Yeah.
But I understand we can't predict the future. And like I said, if I am going to vote on these predictabilities, these assurances needs to be there if I'm going to put a toll on the back of people of Overland Park. I thank you very much for all the information. You have been very cooperative. Every time we had with your staff, there was a great level of research. One last word. From my constituents so far, I have seen a resounding no to this tolling. Just, we have been talking to them. But thank you very much.
Mr. Newland, do you have a question?